Welcome, Mr. Ragnarsson, Vidir. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, and I'm very pleased to be with you today. Yeah, my name is Vidir Ragnarsson. I am the head of consulting at PayAnalytics, and PayAnalytics is a company from Iceland, which is has the goal of creating a software that helps companies to close the pay gap, either gender pay gap, race gaps, and such. Before, I was head of diversity and inclusion and head of people analytics at a power company in Iceland, Reykjavík Energy. So that is basically the why I am in this space, talking about gender and talking about gender pay and equality, being from Iceland and have been working with closing gender pay gaps almost for 10 years. We did that at the company I was with, and now I'm doing it on a bigger scale.
But what is so special about Iceland, the northern countries, and women's rights?
Well, Iceland has been at the top of World Economic Forum gender index for equality for 12 years, I think. So there is a strong cultural movement in the city and in the country towards gender equality, and it started in 1973 that women took a day off. So they left their jobs and they left their homes and took a day off and demanded the same pay and the same rights for women. And then there was a political party only with women, and that got a few seats in 1980 or something like that in the parliament. And so a women's reform and yeah, gender equality is quite high on the agenda. We have a law now that is tackling the gender pay gap. So each company has to measure and have some actions on gender pay gap if it measures, and also it addresses the decision making on pay in the company. So it addresses how you take decisions on pay. And you have to have that in that way that you do not discriminate. So yeah, that is the reason. But why really? I am not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So there's some cultural influence of having diverse and the voices of women being strong. Maybe the cultural reason is that the women in Iceland in the past, it was the land of fishermen, and the men left and the women took care of everything at the home. So maybe that is the cultural reasons. So could be so many things.
Yeah, we will work on that. We will research that. It's very interesting. But anyway, good that you're doing that. And talking about PayAnalytics, the mission of PayAnalytics is to help employers close their pay gaps and keep them closed. How did PayAnalytics start?
It really started in a discussion where a manager in a bank was measuring the gender pay gap, and I don't know the exact number, but in his view it was unacceptable. So they kind of did everything. They tried to bring the gender pay gap down and thought very much about how pay and pay decisions were made. Next year they measured again and it was the same number, so no change. He began a discussion with Margaret Vilborg Bjarnadottir, that is one of the founders of the company. She is an associate professor of statistics in University of Maryland. So he was asking her about, well, can't we have a way to know who are the ones that have the most effect on the pay gap in the company, and to do some planning around how to close the gender pay gap, so actual steps. She took this idea and made a product out of it, a software. And that is the main idea, to help employers will upload their own data using what explains pay for their organizations and measuring the gender pay gap. But not only that, creating suggestions on how to close the gender pay gap if you measure it. So you know exactly what is the impact of each pay decision before you take a pay decision, not only on your costs, which is also built in the system and people usually think about, but also on the gender pay gap. So how to close it.
Yeah, we will talk more about that. But first, I want just to say something in general about PayAnalytics. PayAnalytics takes a stance on political issues and make people feel passionate about bridging the gender gap. How did you become an equal pay influencer?
Well, at the power company or energy company I was working with, there was a big interest and on equality, and just as a human rights issue, and gender pay gap is one of that. So I, among others, got the kind of the mandate or the job from the CEO or the management to close the gender pay gap. And and that was in 2012. So we were kind of, well, we had some ideas on how we could address it. We managed to do this in 5 years. So in the year 2017, we measured gender pay gap in favor of women for the first time. So closing the gender pay gap from around 7% to 0.3% in favor of women, so that was kind of my job to do it. But also I feel very passionate about the issue, and I feel very passionate about the use of data in companies, how you can use data to take better decisions. So this fits very well with that. Reykjavík Energy became a developing partner with PayAnalytics. So there was a cooperation between the two companies. And then I joined the company PayAnalytics in relatively recently in April of this year.
Oh, and you are a data specialist, I've read, but what do you enjoy most about working with data?
I enjoy the most, well, when we can use data to get results that we can translate into some stories or some realities that people didn't know before. So they can take new actions, new decisions based on the data when you've analyzed it in a way they didn't know even was possible, or in a way they didn't know of before. So putting data in a new perspective, and it is very helpful, for example, to think about data and analyze it in data in companies on gender. So things that you don't think are different between the genders might very well be different, but you don't know it until you analyze it based on gender. For example, in my previous job, we asked the people how they were getting to the workplace. So by a green standard or by driving a car and it was surprising. There was a great gender difference. So the women were driving by cars, but the men had more time and more luxury to walk to job and to go on bicycle to jobs. And that was because the women were bound at the home and picking up the kids and things like that. So, and this gives us a new perspective of developing and creating jobs and the job workplaces that takes all aspects into account.
Yeah. So if I quote now from your presentation, which is very interesting, it's written something like, in order to know if we are paying fairly, you need data, you need analysis, you need an action plan, and you need to communicate. But can you tell us something about your methodological approach now?
Yeah. Well, the methodological approach is we both address what is usually called both unadjusted gender pay gap or the seniority gender pay gap. That is the average pay of males versus females, and so we have a good representation on how you can see that very graphically and the changes therein. We of course know that these numbers are affected by what are the jobs behind it, what are the responsibility levels. So our methodology is to run a regression analysis on the things that matter to pay, like different job categories, different responsibility levels, working hours, and all the things that really matter in how you pay is decided. And when we have done that, we add the gender variable. So we have the effects of all these factors, and then we measure if it is different between being a male and being a female, or any other factor that we are looking at, or demographic variable if it is different between the races and also the intersectionality of these both. Then we are looking at both gender and even race. So looking at if there's a difference and comparing between white females versus black males and white males and Asian females and whatever.
Almost possible variables. So.
Yeah. And that gives you a gender pay gap. We have also through the regression analysis, we predict some pay for based on the model you use and the variables you put into the model, and we use that to compare against the actual pay, and so mapping the outliers, and the pay gap comes across because there are differences in outliers between males and females.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So you make it possible to compare all these variables, so that what is coming out, the output is fair. It's also fair output. So you're not making it
exactly.
up. Yeah,
exactly.
But to make people now more enthusiastic, even more, and companies, can you tell us what are the benefits of equal pay?
Well, we are seeing, well, what I think of, maybe talking to the companies, usually companies think about this as a cost. So why are we analyzing gender pay gap? So we have to raise the pay of someone, and that is very costly. But I say, well, I think it's a good business, and it's a good business case to do it, because when you have put in all the variables that really explains how you pay, so then you know who are the underpaid ones and who are the overpaid, and that is very valuable information for the business. So you wouldn't be you don't want to give more money to the people that are already overpaid by your standards. So that is my like a sales pitch to the companies, that they can actually save money and bring it to those that are most valuable to them, to the employees that are most valuable to them. Other things we see when people go on this journey, as we call it, of equal pay in companies, is well, as you said and you mentioned, you have to communicate. You have to, on some level and sometime, you have to tell people, and the legislations that we are seeing coming puts the demands on companies to tell their employees what is the situation, and what is the situation even for your group. So the methods of how you pay, you have to communicate it, and that brings more pay transparency. So that brings another dimension of discussion about pay with the employees. So we are seeing more employee satisfaction in companies that are transparent and measure and take action on closing the gender pay gap. And also when the transparency is greater, and then I'm not talking about revealing everybody's pay, but revealing the methods. So the people, the method that is behind the decision on how you pay. So when people know that, and they feel that it is actually manifested and done, trust toward the employees rise, and that is you can count that to many euros.
Yeah, so I had to think. Yeah, I had to think at compliance. So compliance is good, but to go a step further would be even better. So exactly what you do, a company that cares more about the employees, the customers, and the planet is sustainable and has a commercial return too. It's exactly what you're saying. So it's really matters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for us, as we see it, fair pay is a good business, and compliance with legislation is. We are seeing a move in legislation all over the world. It's new legislation that's very interesting in Canada. That was put into action now in just now in August. We are seeing legislation in Spain. There's legislation in France, and there is a directive in EU on equal pay, and taking actions on that. So that is very interesting. How the member countries will react.
Yeah, but exactly about the EU, I have a question, because EU is a real regulatory superpower. We know that as a kind of first mover. So what would you wish to see in an European legislation that strengthened the principle of equal pay for equal work? What would you wish to see there?
I think, well, when reading the proposals and on the directive, I think they are quite on the spot with what is important. There is an emphasis on there is a difference between work of equal value and work and equal pay for similar work. So that is the way that has been done in Iceland. So you're comparing similar work and you're making sure that there is not a pay discrepancy between men and women in similar work. But the other way around is to bring value to each job and using some objective measures to give points to jobs, and then you can compare equally valuable jobs. So you can compare the pay of on a big scale nurses versus plumbers, for example, and or whatever group that is mainly when you can compare women-dominated jobs with male-dominated jobs, although it's not the same or the similar job. So I think that's very important that is in the legislation. So and that is the way of correcting the gender divided jobs and the job market, because a big explanation for the gender pay gap and the unadjusted gender pay gap is that the women and men are in very dissimilar jobs, and we value them not equally.
Yeah, interesting. But let's go now a little beyond the financial gap. You know, all the indicators show that having women on company boards and diverse teams improves business performance, enhances the ecological profile, and reduces risk-taking and creates many other important effects. So let's start from the little things. You are invited to a lot of conferences and panels. What can be done to boost the number of women speakers?
Well, it's a very good question. I think it is the same probably as we see the trend within companies. Men overvalue their capabilities, and women ask for less money for the same jobs, and they don't apply for jobs unless they are 130% sure that they fulfill all the requirements. But men may be, well, look at the title and fill in an application. So some empowerment. I have no idea how we could do it, but it's so important. There, of course, like in Iceland, there was legislation on 50-50 or 60-40 in board of companies. So
the quota,
the quota, yeah. And maybe a quota for a conference could be a way.
Well, our conferences are gender balanced.
Yeah. That's
but I have a further question as a data specialist. Have you any ideas about how to stop the hatred and the violence online? This is also very bad for women, especially. You know, this. Have you there any ideas as a data specialist?
Well, I think if we can portray the reality more clearly about with data on how reality really is, and get that into the minds of young people, and so people often in these violent groups and such are reacting to a reality that they think are the reality. And I think, well, a more informed discussion and conversations are the way to go in that.
So thank you very much for your insights. Now we come to the conclusions. And so as as kids do you have a message for our users? I mean, we don't have only kids, so if you have, something important to say from your point.
Well, the message is as I've been saying, fair pay and equal pay is not only a very costly thing to do, but I think it makes sense for the businesses. It makes the societies better, and what we usually hear is, the culture is here in this country, in this company is so special. We can't address this, but by analyzing in some way and collecting data, it's not necessary to be a lot of variables. Just start somewhere and measure and take some actions. That is the first steps. Start by collecting the data you have, analyze it, and from there take some actions.
Okay, let's hope that many are listening to you. So the very, very last question is about your future plans. What are your plans in the company PayAnalytics? What are you planning?
We are a solution that helps employers close and keep the gender pay gap closed. That is an issue that is growing in awareness all over the world. So our plan is to be a voice in that area, in that market, and doing it as fairly and proposing ideas as fairly and contributing in that way to a more fair companies and a more fair countries in the world. There is a legislative force that is helping us, and so we look forward to the future with a positive mindset.
Positivity. Let's hope that all over Europe there will be this legislation so that equal pay is mandatory, because otherwise it doesn't work. Okay.
No, exactly. Goodwill is fine, but it brings you very slow results.
Thank you for your work and thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.